What is up, YouTube? Today we are back with a very special video. It's going to be the Legend account review, not of somebody else, but it is going to be for my own account. We were able to finish Legend again 3 seasons in a row in the summer 2025 season, as you can see on the frame here. And basically, we're going to be doing this live on stream, so you'll be seeing the chat on the top left or wherever. And I'll be going through my account to kind of explain my thought process and how the season was and just kind of go from there. So if you guys do enjoy and you like the Legend account reviews, as we'll be doing, 4 of them this week, please drop a like and comment for the algorithm. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into the account review. All right, so normally with these account reviews, I like starting off with like asking people questions, and I guess people don't like I don't really have anyone to ask me questions about my account. So if anybody has questions in the chat, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'm just gonna maybe ramble about random stuff. But yeah, I would say that like this season particularly, I would say was really, really difficult. And the reason why I say it was really difficult is because the release of Aram, right? She kind of shifted the meta quite a bit in terms of like playing Harsetti and not playing Harsetti. So in the last like 2 and 3 weeks, I stopped pre-banning Harsetti, and I was fighting against Harsetti a lot, and because Aram was available, and it made the game really hard for me because I was almost like relearning the game. Because with Harsetti, you have to have so many duplicate characters, right? So, for example, like I need to have like 2 Tywins, I have 2 Bellions, I have like I don't know, two Flans, right? One for Harsetti, one's for standard, and it just made the game really, really hard to play. And I just had a lot of difficult adjusting to playing against Harsetti, whereas I had Harsetti pre-banned basically all the time. So the last like 2 weeks, I really felt like I probably wasn't going to be able to end Legend just because of the fact that playing against Harsetti was really difficult, and making that adjustment from playing with Harsetti pre-ban for like 2, 3, 4,000 games in the past few seasons versus unbanning it for the last 2 weeks was really fucking bad. And it's really difficult for me to deal with the, I'm okay to get gear gapped if I get outsped, if someone out tanks me or whatever. I won't tilt from that. But when you play multiple games of Harsetti and then somehow they just get like the best turn order possible versus you, and that's like their only win condition versus your draft, and then it happens like multiple games in a row because this speed is random, it tilts the shit out of me. So yeah. So anyway, to kind of summarize, I basically banned Harsetti again, and the game felt way better. And yeah, that's what I would say why the season was really hard. And obviously, Renok and Veronica being so annoying, it kind of worked out in the end. And I guess, well, I was Lidica the opener. You have your fastest gear on. So in the first the last like 2 weeks, I was kind of racing people with the 315 Lidica, and then the last week I kind of realized that like you cannot race on last week, right? You have to play for like the most consistent, play for the turn 2. You have to try to find options to not race, right? Because evidently 315 is not very fast. There's a lot of people who are like 320 plus on Lidica, even on Amid they're 320 plus, which is why having the top speed on Lidica was mainly just to punish people who played really, really, greedy and maybe like a little bit too disrespectful. For example, right, if they pick like, Lua on 3, right, with no, openers on 1, 2, and they're just trying to slam like a Lua comp on me, then I feel comfortable enough to, force Lidica to apply the restrict and push back and all that stuff and try to deny the tempo. But I tried to avoid Lidica. I probably didn't even pick Lidica in the last few days, like much at all. Yeah. So yeah, very, very few and far in between, but I just had it on top speed just because, like, this is not even my top speed, but I just had it really fast just in case I had to play aggro, then I could, right? I could play aggro with things like Spirit Eye Celine, and just like out-tempo people out very fast. And yeah, I think those are all the questions I'll probably say for now. Let's get into the account review. So Lidica we already briefly mentioned, right? Amid was just for people, basically for me to punish people who were playing tank down, and if they were not prepared for the Amid, then they would just get destroyed, right? And I think a lot of players this season, if you weren't able to adapt in the last season, especially going for Legend, if you weren't able to adapt to playing against Amid, you basically were not able to end Legend, right? You had to have a lot of different techs ready, right, for Amid, which we'll see later in the video. But really quickly, I'll just kind of talk about, right, having units like Yulha gear, right, that can tank Straze, right? Having units like Celine, that's really fast to deal with the Amid, right? Or playing something like Protection Set Yufine to try to deny some of the combat readiness early in the draft, right? These are things that people had to do and adapt in the last week to finish Legend. So that's why I had the Amid ready in case people I could punish them on as first pick or second pick and just kind of shut them down. Cidd is just an imprint, not really used. I don't try to race, so it's kind of whatever. Luna is also kind of a whatever character for me. I did have her at 280 for most of the season, but I sped her up to 300 just because I felt like having her go in front of my Peira was pretty helpful at times, where she can just like land a seal, and then Peira can just do a lot of work, right? And then it will be really, really impactful. Sea Phantom Politis, not much. I was on an ER build, and then I swapped off of ER to an effectiveness build because I noticed that a lot of players were, really ready for like an ER poly, which is around 280, 290 speed, and then you break into like the ML Aria and stuff like that. And people were really prepared for it, right? And especially because, Tenebria, most of the time has enough effectiveness to tag an ER player anyways, unless you're like the 1% of ER players that can resist. I can't. So I opted to go for a more aggro setup. So if I ever did get to be on the aggressive side, or maybe like Illinav's pre-ban and go like SPP Janua or something like that, then I would try to abuse that. So I wanted the effectiveness to guarantee a pushback. And the week before last week, picking Sea Phantom Politis into Tenebria wasn't terrible because most of the time you're outspeeding, but basically if I just ever needed tempo, I just like the effectiveness more than FRES for the aforementioned reasons. Peira obviously is my MVP of the season, like no question. Like just she's just a disgusting unit. Like she needs to be nerfed. Like she's so broken, right? Like she has a cleanse, she has evasion on turn 1, she has so much damage on S1, she can AoE S1 for like 50k damage. She is tanky, she's fast, she gives your team tempo, you get swift boots. Her kit's just busted, and she has defense break. Like Lone Wolf Peira was like my MVP for sure, and I think a lot of the people who, were frequenting my stream, definitely know why. Right, Lone Wolf Peira on Uberis just did so much damage, and even through Boss Veronica, it almost felt like if I just soul burn S1 twice, like anything behind Veronica would just die, right? Because like the defense break plus Uberis damage plus her rampage stacking is just way, way too much damage. It's just too overwhelming, right? So it was really, really strong. Veronica, it's a Veronica, nothing special. Frida, I never really picked. I had it ready though for some people. I did pick it. Versus people that played Bellion on 3. I did punish people. So when I was second pick and they lock in their 2-3 and they have Bellion on 3, then I'll go like Frida on 3 if I have an aggro unit in the front on the top side. For example, like Luna, then I would be able to shut down a Bellion team pretty easily. Wander Silk Imprint, nothing special. You want immunity to dual attack on turn 1. High effectiveness Lua. This unit is broken. I'm gonna let you guys know that this unit is broken. This unit is so good in aggro because a lot of times when Zio's open and people try to play a little bit aggressive into you, like you can go like Lua on 2 and then Zio on 3. And normally what people would do is they'll go like Firefly on 2 with Zio 3. And what will happen is people will tank down with Solitaria on 3 into you. But when you go Lua 2 with Zio on 3 instead, it gives you a little bit more flexibility in terms of your drafting, in terms of how you want to pivot, right? You can either like pick more damage and play like Zio aggro, or you can pick like more debuff to play control, or you can pick like more books to soul burn Lua. She's very strong, really, really strong, especially when you pair it with Lone Wolf Peira. And you'll notice that I'm playing on a high effectiveness build, and the reason for that is because a lot of people made adaptations to playing against Lua, where they would have Bellion on 3, and then they'll just play F-Res on 4-5, right? But when you have the high effectiveness Lua build, you can tag stuff like ML Aria that don't have F-Res. You can tag stuff like Ilinab that has a little bit of ER. You can tag, any Soul Weaver that has some ER as well, really, really reliably, especially stuff like DJB, right? That has like maybe sub 200, 250, right? The high effectiveness Lua really punish those players where they try to F-Res check you, but you just have enough, especially if you have like ARAM on your team as well, potentially, plus another 50 effectiveness, you're looking at 240, right? So there's just really no way people were able to resist the high effectiveness Lua, which is why I loved playing her so much. ARAM, I had her on a fast build when I ever needed to play her to generate souls with units like Lidica, units like Lone Peira, stuff like that. And I do think that having two is very helpful. Having one on a fast build on Birdseye, and then having a slow one with like, Guardian Ice Crystal or something, which you'll see later, is something that I would recommend. DJB, didn't pick much. DJB was good like maybe like 3 or 4 weeks before season end, but once people made adaptations to playing against the DJB FCC, he was just getting shit on, right? So I didn't really pick this unit very much. I prioritize the speed over the ER, so that's why it's kind of, this is a really shit build. But I opted for like really tanky over FRS checking, right? So that's why. Spirit Eye Celine, pretty standard, right? Just high damage, high speed, Wind Rider. I did have my Celine at like 285. I had her a little bit faster, but one of the issues was she was cutting in front of my openers. For example, primarily Lone Wolf Peira, right? Having her go in front of Lone Wolf Peira when I didn't have any buffs really fucked me. I lost like many games one day for that, so I adjusted her speed to be 13 lower than Peira, so that I can always have my opener go first and then apply swift boots and buffs so that Celine can nimble on turn 1. Pirate Captain Flan, basically a Zeo bridge. You want to be 275 plus. Typically, you want to be like 277 plus because you're only getting a 15% combat readiness boost, but basically a 4 or 5 unit for my Zeo bridge. F10A is not bad. I just basically hit her on 4 or 5 when they were playing super tank down with like no ER, and I'm like, okay, I just need unbuffable into like Dragon Bride Senya and Bloodmoon Haze, for example. Then you just slam F10A and it usually gets banned. Yufine, she definitely fell off. She was really good in the middle of the season, but people started making adaptations. Obviously, ARAM came out, so like Lidica and Renewed Will boosting the ARAM in front of the Holiday Yufine, like you just couldn't get enough combat readiness to boost. So she just kind of got phased out of the meta, right? So it just got too fast. The meta got too fast, so she fell off. LPK, I only have this geared to kill Aidens. Either kill Aiden or kill Sylvian Sage or like some kind of evasion artifact, basically. Fast Celine on highest attack EE. This EE or this build is mainly to play against Amid, and Amid would basically S2, right? Celine cuts in front because you're gonna be getting, I think it's a 44% CR push or 54. You get a 54% combat readiness boost, so at 270, when Amid has Straze, for example, it will break the skill null off the Straze, and even with an Amid S2 plus S3, Celine will still take the turn in front of the Straze, right? So, and the reason people in Legend made the Celine build like this is because Strays, most of the time, as an Amid player, would be on a triple Torrent set. And usually on a triple Torrent set, at most, they're usually going to be at max, maybe like 210, 200, 190 speed, right? That's why having the Celine really fast was really good versus the Amid Strays players. Another notable unit that kind of serves like a similar purpose would be like Ocean Breeze Luluca. There were some people that were playing like 270, 280, like Ocean Breeze Luluca to kind of serve the same purpose on Soul Constellation, which I kind of also did have here. So just as a, FYI and just yapping about it. Mediator Kawerik wasn't really that good. I mean, this build is not good, but it was made specifically just to cleanse when people pick Hellion Lua into me. So if I'm playing Peira, for example, if I'm playing Peira and they pick Hellion Lua into me to try to provoke me since they know I'm Uberius, I pick Hand Guy so that I can cut in front with Spirit Purification, cleanse off the provoke, and then I can play the game from that spot. And I don't care about how they play that spot, right? So mainly the Spirit Purification was only good into Hellion Lua, and not just Lone Wolf Peira. For example, if I had Celine as a carry, and I needed to get a cleanse off her because they picked Lua into me to try to provoke lock me since I'm not on ER, then Hangai can kind of cover that lose condition, right, by cutting in front and cleansing for me. Zeo, pretty standard build, 270, 200F, as much damage and bulk you can fit on a build like this. Nothing too crazy, but definitely, I think most people that are watching this, you probably think like, oh, like mine's like 255, 260. In Legend, you probably have to be like 275 plus if you want to have like a really consistent Zeo, but I just had mine at 270. I was like, fuck it, like whatever. If I get outspent at 270, it is what it is. That guy's dick is just bigger than mine. GG's. Gala 269. Not really used. Like she's just not that impactful this season. So I do have two Achates. And I want to talk about why I have two Achates builds. One Achates is at 300 ER with the Bastion of Hope, obviously. And the reason why I have the ER Achates is so that I can res check people, right? I can play Bellion on 3. I can res check by just resisting like a ZOS3, for example, or I can resist a, Sea Phantom Politis pushback, or, Peira Death Break, basically any debuff coming in, right? And when I needed to get a guarantee cleanse versus a heavy debuff comp, I would pick Achates, right? Mainly into like Zeo on 3, and surprisingly, Zeo never really tagged her. I don't know how. I don't know why people's Zeo is not like 250 effectiveness or something. I don't know, but they didn't have high enough effectiveness to tag me, and it worked, so I just went with that. And the Idol's Cheer Katie's is a little bit different. So typically in more like standard matchups where I'm not getting cleaved by Zeo or heavy debuff comps, I opted to go for an Idol's Cheer Katie's instead so that I can CR push. And one of the main units I would pick with this would be Bellion. And when you have Bellion on 3 to deny soul burns, when you play the Achates, you have a little bit of effect resistance here at 166, but the Idol's Cheer is pushing my Bellion up by 19%, almost 20% every single hit, right? So it was really, really helpful when I needed to just like push my team. It doesn't matter if it's Bellion or Flan or Peira or whoever, right? If I needed a cleanser and tempo, and some sort of like healing, I would just basically pick this Achates on Idol's Cheer to give myself as much CR push as I can for my carries. And then Straze, pretty standard. I had a triple Torn Straze, but I swapped it to an aggro Straze so that I can play it with Peira. Some people that would go tank down versus me with like Arunca, FCC, Arya, and all that bullshit. I just basically slam Straze on 5. It's a force ban. He has to respect it, and then it's just GG's. Milim, just designed to kill Landy and kill Celine. Nothing special. Diene, also, I only pick this when people pre-ban Ilinab and they force the pen units, like Dragon Bright Senya, Blood Moon Haste, Janua, blah blah blah, and then Diene becomes a force ban, or I can get it through the draft, and then the game is basically over from that point. Lionheart Cermia, this is a cleave Lionheart, and this is pre-buff. I haven't changed the build yet ever since she got buffed, so I didn't really use this unit that much. I only really used it when like they pick like, I don't know, Edward Elric into me when I'm playing Lidica, and I know I can get a guaranteed counter off, then I would pick her. But she was very lackluster, so I didn't really pick her. She's very inconsistent. DDR, this is a very interesting tech. I got shit on by one DDR player like maybe like 5 days before the season ended, or 4 days, and I was like, damn, that's some cool tech, because Queen Whistle, if you ZOS 3, it will push the DDR up by 15%, and then you can play control, right? ZOS 3 into DDR S3 S2, boost your team, and then you skip them, right? And there's actually a really cool tech on Queen's Whistle with Aram's artifact, which I forget what the guy's name was, but whoever it was, shout out to him, because this is a really cool tech that I designed for aggro setups when I was playing with DDR. And even if it's not Zeo, for example, if you have like Peira, if you S3 S1, she has the highest attack on Nubarius, and then you can just overwhelm people, right? Because with the Swift Boots on DDR, you can actually just S2, get the increased effectiveness, and then slam your buttons, right? Nahkwol, not really picked, but I picked it once against what's that guy's name in Fleet that was in Talentless. Keno or I forgot his name. I picked it against that one guy, and he got shit on because he played Albedo on 3. So I just played Nahkwol, like a blast in the past, basically, but used very sparingly. OBL, like I mentioned earlier about the Celine to cut Amid, that's kind of why I have her around this build, and on Soul Constellation. Choux fell off really hard. FCC got buffed, and the fixed damage nerf, or I guess the fixed damage passive, totally gutted Choux, and she just feels like a very, very weak unit. I had her at 285 at some points in the season, but the meta just got too fast for Choux to actually exist. And a lot of times when you play Choux versus ER players, they already have another backup plan. They either like tempo up or they can just deal with your Choux chip damage, and it's just really inconsistent. But in terms of building the Choux, I had her on a much bulkier build than most people would, so there's that. Ludwig's at 260 on Speed Torrent, nothing special. Solitaria, speed effectiveness, really nothing special as well. Mainly just to counter like early Flan pickers, right? Put Solitaria on 3 and play from that spot. Bunny Dom, not really picked. Flan, just the aggro Flan, standard 256 speed, right? Very, very generic build. Schuri's actually not bad as an imprint when you have Lidica, so that you can apply the explosives, right? So it's actually not bad with Lidica, but that's like the only use case I had since I don't have blue Peira builds. So yeah, he was decent, I guess, if I needed an imprint, but it's mainly just racing. Ida, nothing special, just a bridge. SBA, same thing, just bridges, right? I can either play this with Peira or Poly or Lua or anything, right? Same goes for SBA. Dragon King Sharun, nothing special, right? I had her on self-imprints, but basically if I just needed to deal with like a DDR or deal with a Mort or whatever, or if I just needed defense breaks to line up with my DPS, then I had Sharun. And I think one thing, if you're watching this and you're more of like an early mid-game player that's kind of branching into RTA, just be mindful that all of your debuffers should always be tuned before your DPS. So my Sharun is at 253, right? You can see that my RB's 240, Ryla's 237, Politis is like 231, Jacko's 224. Like make sure anytime you pick a debuffer or you're building a debuffer, you want to ask yourself, how am I going to use this character? In what cases will I be picking her? Who am I going to be pairing that character with? Right? And then make the build accordingly, right? So don't just blindly look at my build and then just copy it one for one. You always have to be mindful of these things, right? Hwayoung's at 250. This unit is fucking broken. I wish I have her triple S, but I don't. But she's broken, right? I'm 4K 250, 305 crit damage. This artifact is broken. She just nukes people out of this universe, and it's just so busted because she's not just good with Aram, but she's good if you play with like Seafan Politis or Peira or Amid or Lua or even New Moon Luna. Anyone that has a non-attack skill that can use Hwayoung as a bridge, she just fucking wipes, right? She's just so broken. Blooming Lidica, one of my favorite characters this season. So I get an increase to 27, so that is like 271% effectiveness or something like that. So I had a 271 effectiveness on Lidica, and I slowed her down by 10 speed. And the reason I have her at this effectiveness is because I made an adjustment on the last week where players were playing Achates on Idle Shear at like 290 speed, and then they would pick 2 DPSs that would cleanse. So they would pick like Tenebria plus Celine, and then if you ZOS 3 into the Achates, you get resisted because they have so much FRES on it. So the adaptation that I had to make was I would ZOS 3 onto Celine, or I would ZOS 3 onto Tenebria, units that most likely are not going to have enough effect resistance to resist ZO at 200F. And then I would let Lidica do the work to land the Restrict and the Unbuffable on the Achates, right? Shout out to Xarian. I think he gave me that suggestion like 3 days out, before the season ended. And that's basically why I upped my effectiveness to 270 plus to effectively tag these high ER Achates more reliably. Because if you can tag the Achates, the game's basically over. Laya, I tried cooking the Laya with Aram on Bird's Eye View. It's not good. It's really not good. You have to pick like Ilanav on 2 with Laya 3, and it feels really awkward because if they ban Aram, then your Laya is kind of a dead unit. And they can also jam like DDR Shu on you, and Laya's kind of, phased out. So, yeah, not a very good unit anymore, I would say, in some cases, but I did have her on immunity so that I don't get death broken by Peira. So, one thing to mention is if you are playing with Lone Wolf Peira unbanned, you have to basically have like every single unit that you're gonna pick into a Peira matchup on immunity. Otherwise, it's just Peira S1, death break into Flan, into fucking GG dick in your mouth, and you're just fucking dead. Not fun. Not a fun experience. Okay. Vildred 247, just the very shit builds. If I need a race. Watcher, I tried cooking a Watcher setup versus Lone Wolf Peira players. It didn't work. I also tried having this unit kill Veronica, and it kills the Rocket Punch ones, but it doesn't kill the fucking like POV or like the prot set or fucking Noble Oath like 30k Arunkas. So it's really really inconsistent. But she is good when you need to have like an imprint on, let's say, like Aimit or something, and you need to kill a Peira or you need to kill a Flan. He has a 100% hit chance. It's just like completely nuke. So that's why I had this build, right? Guard Captain Crow didn't really pick it outside of if they play like Flan +1, then he's a force ban. He's also pretty good in Harseti matchups, but you do need immunity. So obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I adjusted my pre-bans to start pre-banning Harseti again. So it was kind of useless. We're gonna take a quick break, chat. I'm going to. I need to get the food outside, so give me 1 second.
5 minutes later.
Did you make any adjustments on the last day that really helped you secure, or was it mostly smooth sailing? I would say I made adjustments like every day for the last week of grinding. Um, I made a lot of adjustments in the last week. Like I was telling Sam, like my IRL Korean friend, I was reading E7GG. I read E7GG probably like 10 hours in the last week. And the reason why I had to read so much E7GG is because, like the month before, I was playing so much Etheria, and I basically like had no, and also I had the Guild War Legend Rush account, so I didn't really have much like desire or drive to go for Legend. And then, like, just playing for fun, I was like, like I'm actually like kind of close, but I feel like I'm a little bit behind on the meta, so basically every day I was like reading E7GG on the treadmill and like in the gym to try to get a better grasp of the meta and like how I can make adjustments. So yeah, I was making a ton of adjustments. And like for example, one adjustment that I made was picking Abyssal Yufine on 2, right? Very early on in the draft. And the reason why was because versus the mid players, they would just force through your they would force through the, like, especially versus a mid, they would force through your Yufine if you pick Elbrus Yufine instead of Aureus, and Elbrus is useless, right? It doesn't do anything. So I made a prot set one, and I gave her really good gear so that I could have mitigation early on, and then I can be a little bit more flexible on the 3-4-5. And I made a bunch of adjustments throughout the week, right? For example, I had Lilius on high effectiveness to tag Amid. I had Celine on high speed to stop Amid. I had Ocean Breeze Luluca on Soulcon to stop Amid, right? I had Yolha geared to stop Amid, right? I had Wukong geared to stop Amid, right? I also made a slow Yufine to pair with Zio versus some Harseti matchups, right? Did it work? Fuck no, it didn't work. But yeah, and then like going for swapping my ARAM to like a fast build on Bird's Eye, right? Another change I made in the last week. Hellion Lua going into like a high effectiveness build, also a change I made last week to deal with ER checkers and people who just didn't respect it. I slowed down my Celine, like I mentioned earlier, to not lose games due to speed RNG. I geared LPK for like the 1 in 50 games to just straight up kill Sylvian or kill Aiden. I made an Aggro DDR in the last 4 days. Yeah, yeah. Basically, I had to make a lot of changes in the last week, like a shit ton. I had to make so many changes, because the meta was so fast, you know, and especially on that last day when I was playing, I was like, I would say I was like pretty much in peak form. Like I don't know, I woke up and I was like, I got it, and I just like turned on a stream, went like 8-1, and then secured. But a lot of it was due to prep work. Just a lot of E7GG, a lot of like reading my own drafts, figuring out like why I lost, like how I can like try to combat like the fast meta of Amid cleavers and Lidica cleavers, and that's it. So, but anyway, yeah, great question. As I mentioned, I had Lilius on a Aureus build, and I had her at 241 to cut with her 20% combat readiness boost on her S2, and then 153 effectiveness to tag the Amid, because Amid most of the time was on like top speed. They didn't have ER, or nor did they have immunity. So I picked Lilius a few times. Actually, I think pretty sure she's like 80% win rate, because I only picked her like sparingly, and she was not bad versus like I mentioned earlier in the video with like Mediator Kawerik cleansing for my units. Lilius kind of serves the same purpose, right? If they like force a Hellion Lua into you, and you just like cleanse a provoke, and then you S3, right? And then you just cleanse everything off, she tanks a challenge, and then your team can play from that spot. So the Lilius actually was a kind of like a pocket pick for me. 8 win, just if I have C Phantom Politis, I would just pick aggro 8 win and just try to like bust them open. Tenebria. So this unit is fucking broken. I'm just gonna say that right now. She was so strong because she has her S3 that can land block, right? Yes, that's broken. Random Bebo, that's broken. What's more broken is when you pair the rupture damage with Uberius Peira. That shit is so broken. It's so broken because not only are you basically landing all your debuffs, but you're applying Rupture and you're carrying a book to allow Peira to soul burn twice in the game, right? And the fact that you can soul burn twice in a game with Peira is just way too much damage. So yeah, I picked like Tenebria Peira a lot together because it's just such a strong pairing, and I mean she can be built on like so many different builds, right? I mean, I actually pulled a second one because I'm going to build a second one as well for like an opener setup. So that's to come for the future. But yeah, she's really strong just because block can't be cleansed by basically anything or anyone. And if you don't have super good speed gear like me, you can just play on like a super tanky build and just fucking be a nuisance, right? If you have like mitigation and guardian ice crystal, like you can tank 3 Flan S1s, no problem, right? Or you can play like Proof of Valor. It's good as well. RB is pretty generic, 240 for like 12k MCD, just rip as much damage as I can. Rylet, I only pick it for when I have Lone Wolf Peira and I need to kill off people who don't have mitigation. Then it's not bad, but even then his gear is not that good, so I didn't pick him that much. DPS Poly, it's okay. Like I didn't really pick this. I picked the Degen Poly way more into Amid players to go for like Abyssal Crown win con, but honestly, like I don't know why. I feel like Degen Poly only works like when it's on the other side. When it's on your side, like that shit does not work. It does not fucking cleanse. Like it's some fucking bullshit, dude. So that was really annoying. But yeah, I picked Degen Poly way more. Schneel's pretty generic. Again, just immunity for Lone Wolf Peira matchups. Young Senya, Not much to say. I just had her on a faster build so I can cycle faster, and obviously immunity is important so that you can't get sealed off by like Ameru or defense broken into like a extra hit or something, or I don't know. Just immunity is mandatory, so that's why I have it. DDR on Jik, Guardian Ice Crystal, pretty generic, just super tanky, and I actually found that DDR towards the end of the season, he was actually very, very highly contested for me. I thought that he was so strong because in the last like 3 days of the RTA grind, especially when you're going like for legend, people tend to play a little bit safer, and that's kind of what I leaned into as well, where if people would pick like, Boss Arunca and they would have a bunch of units behind the Boss Arunca, your DDR can still reach, right? Like DDR S3, S2, maybe pair it with like a Gabellion on 3F, or pair it with a Uberius, Peira, Soulburn, or just having the Guardian Ice Crystal to keep your team alive longer and cycle, but just very strong, really really strong towards the end, and I think I picked him a lot on the last day, so he was an MVP of the last day for sure. He was like so broken. Briar's kind of whatever, like she's not a real unit, so fuck this unit, she's trash, not a real character. um I never really picked her, so yeah, fuck this unit. Jacko, I also didn't really pick this unit because he just doesn't do enough damage. I have no imprints. He's just a Zeo bridge, but I never picked it. Landy, I only ever picked this into people who have a shit ton of buffs and they can't reach my Landy, so maybe like 1 in 50 games. Here's my second ARAM, which is on counter, and I mainly had this for matchups where I knew the person wasn't going to be cleaving me, and I knew that we were going to be engaging in kind of like a slower standard matchup. Then I would pick the counter ARAM way more because the counter gives you an extra win con, it gives you stun chance, it gives you healing, right? Whereas the aggro one is mainly just to try to overwhelm someone and kill them, right? With the bird's eye view. So that's why I have like the second ARAM to play the more like standard setup, versus running bird's eye view in a standard setup. It just won't be that good, right? And if you ever did get a chance to play like ARAM, like for me at least, when I got to play ARAM and DDR together, I get the double Guardian Ice Crystal, so I'm super fucking tanky, right? With ARAM sustaining me on S1 is just so super valuable. Here's my second Luna. I basically picked the second Luna when I needed to get Seal. So basically it's a force man on 4-5, right? If you have openers like Peira, Lua, Zeo, or Lone Peira, or whoever, New Moon Luna, if there's a lot of passives, you can just get it as a force man. Or I had this also geared specifically for Hersetti matchups. So when I was playing versus Hersetti, I wanted to pick Luna. I needed to make sure that she's tanky enough to take the early damage. So that's why I have her like super tanky on this build. Dilibet, nothing special. Obviously, again, immunity is mandatory so that you don't get killed by Flan on the first turn. And I just had 2k, 221 on Durandal so that I can cut in front of people who played like Ran Cleave or Briar Cleave or any form of like heavy debuff cleave. If they're playing like Lidica plus SBA, then I needed to make sure my Dilibet was fast enough to basically cut when there's enough debuffs on field. And obviously, the Durandal helps by accomplishing that very well. Destina, not a real unit. I had her on high ER to resist, but I tried to pick her one time and I got tagged, so I was like, fuck this unit, she's trash. Slow Zeo. So I picked Slow Zeo specifically for like 2 or 3 players on the ladder on the last week because some people were playing really greedy. They would pick like C Phantom Politis and Elegos on 1-2, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, if I go fast Zeo, I'm gonna get Zeo trapped, right? And if you don't know what a Zeo trap is, okay, I don't really want to explain it, but basically a Zeo Trap is like they have 4 stealth units and then 1 unit that you can hit, right? I.e. Savior Aiden, i.e. Young Senya, i.e. General Purgus, okay, in a nutshell. And so when I pick an opener with my slow Zeo, they weren't expecting it, right? So it gives me a soul burn, and my opener goes first, right? So if I have like Lidica on 3 with Zeo on 2, they go into a Zeo Trap, and then they eventually they find out like, oh shit, this is a slow Zeo, and then they just get fucked. So the slow Zeo is actually very clutch versus some of those players. Not picked. Um, Standard Janua, nothing special. Elena, also not great. Not great. I tried picking her into like Lidica, but if you like if it's like Lidica gets soul burned, or she gets a soul burn Lidica and it tags your Elena 50-50, like 50-50 lose con is fucking shit, right? Like 50-50 lose con is basically the same as like, slamming imprints and racing, so that's why I never really picked Elena versus Lidica. Arya, pretty generic builds. Um, very, very generic build. Servers are taking a shit, but I didn't really rely on her too much. Like maybe towards the last week, I picked her a little bit to FRES check some people, but this was a really lackluster build, I would say. So not a great build. Like very low crit damage. Um, yeah, it's an okay build. Sharun not used. BBK not picked. Valiant very good. The reason why I have 96 effect resistance is because you need to be able to resist some random debuffs. For example, like FCCS1 or Flan Stun or I don't know, just any random debuffs that are coming your way once you're past the first turn is very, very helpful. Especially if you have like, Ilnav on your team or FCC on your team, where you can actually resist or release your team imprint to give more effect resistance, then the Valiant is going to be able to resist some pesky debuffs and, getting stripped and whatnot, right? So very, very, very helpful to have that. And another thing, if you're a player that's getting a little more serious into RTA, be mindful whenever you pick Valiant, right? Just pay attention, like, what is this attack, right? If I'm pairing Valiant with units like Infernaris and Achates that has Idol's Cheer, or Sea Phantom Politis that has a dual attack, I need to make sure that my Valiant has the highest attack on the team for those cases, right? So often I run into players in Emperor where they don't tune their attack properly on the Valiant, so that the Sea Phantom Politis is fucking dragging some random fucking unit, right? Dragging a fucking Empyrean Ilanav. That's fucking worthless, right? If you need to get value, you have to make sure that you attack tune your Valiant for cases like that. Additionally, the Valiant is really important. The speed is very important. It's not just about being 190, 200, 220, or whatever. You have to think about what units am I pairing it with, right? And in many cases, you're going to be pairing it with DDR, right? So my DDR is 230, so that's why I have my Valiant at 212, right? Because I need to make sure that my debuffers that can enable my Valiant setup to go before it, right? I don't want it to be like in the same speed RNG. Like if my DDR is 215, my Valiant is 212, you might lose a game just purely based off of the fact that your Valiant goes first, right? So really important stuff like that. You need to make sure that you're tuning your characters. Otherwise, you're losing out on a lot of value. Shuri not picked. LRK not really picked. I did have this on the Soul Steel artifact. I forget what it's called, Crown of Glory maybe. But I picked it like a few times when they picked like Yufine and Valiant together. Then it's kind of just like an OP setup. But outside of that, I didn't really pick him too much. A Mario Encounter, love this build, inspired by Kukurbat. The counter is just so cheese because you can get a seal, you can land some extra free damage, you can, run her on Fairytale for strip potential, you can get your focus stacks faster. She's just really annoying to deal with, and I used her way more versus Harsetti, but I think counter is definitely her best in slot. Alina, not picked. Not picked. Not picked. Tori. So Tori was a crazy character for me in the last day. So one thing I want to point out above everything is that your Tori, you want to be at least 4.7k attack. And the reason for that is because if your Tori is 4.7k attack or higher, you will get a really big barrier based on her shield scaling, where instead of dying in 2 hits, you will die in 3 hits. So that's one thing about Tori that I learned from the Koreans, that you have to have 4.7k attack and above, otherwise your Tori can't tank 3 hits. Because I was like, I used to have like a 4.2k Tori, and I was like, why the fuck is this guy's Tori tanking 3 hits? And like mine's not, you know? And then luckily my friend Sam was like, yo, like look at this Tori, dude. Like, and then I was like, oh shit, you can tank 3 hits with 4.7k plus. So that's why I have it at 4.85. So in case anybody's wondering, but you have to make sure that you don't have any HP subs at all in any of your gear. Otherwise it doesn't work. right? Even if you have like 1 HP sub, if you're like above this 7,805, it's fucked. It doesn't work. Anyways, yeah, Tori was good into heavy debuff comps, mainly like Luna. So there's that. Shu, not picked. Ludwig, he did have gear for Amid, but yeah, not really anymore. Well, I mainly pick Ruel on like 4-5 if they are just picking a shit ton of damage and I just need a reviver like Blood Moon Haze and Ruel to just anchor my team, then I did pick her, but outside of that, I didn't really pick her too much. Obsig, this is just tuned for Amid, so I can S2, S3 and just nuke any comp that has FCC in there. Aiden, very shit builds. I mainly had this for not just like Harsetti when I had it open, but when people would pick like, you know, Bellion or Yufine together and they have so much AoE, Aiden just gets so much tempo when she just ramps up so fast and she can just kill off a unit so easily by herself if they have no mitigation. So it's really good into like some AoE teams, but outside of that, she was kind of, I would say like not great. Not bad into Lidica though. If you need like a decent unit to 1v4 versus Lidica, like this unit's not bad. Prot set a Tywin, basically just prot a Tywin to play against Harsetti, or if I ever was facing someone that would early pick Yufine and I need mitigation and I can get a guaranteed S3 for like stun and death break versus Yufine players, then I went for a protection set a Tywin. Key save for the Amid setup. Aras on prot set. And 184, one thing I want to mention is if you ever do play Aras and you're building him, you need to make sure you're building him 10 speed slower than Tori. If you're not slower than Tori, you cannot benefit off Windrider, right? Tori wants to go for the S3, S1 Cascade kill. Windrider, you get the extra damage, and then Aras can go for an S2, reapply your immunity and the death break and kill potential so that you get more value out of it. Fene not picked. Mort was on Destro, and again, you have to have immunity. Why? Because Peira is unbanned. So immunity on everything that you might pick into there, and basically anytime that there's a lot of counter, like Arunca plus Amiki plus Yufine. Mort. GG, right? Okay, my Teu did have gear, so I'm just gonna put it back on real quick. I think it was this. Because there is something I want to talk about Teu. So Teu I had it at 170 speed, but one of the main issues at having it at 170 speed is some Asian players, they made their Achates really fast to where the Achates would actually cut in front of the Teu, even though you're gaining 100% fight combat readiness. So I changed my speed from 170 to 187, and I dropped the damage a little bit, just so that the Achates would stop cutting me, because people teched out against the Zeo Teu setup. So I had to make an adjustment as well in the last week to speed up my Teu when I ever did play Zeo on 3. FCC's on Aureus, really nothing special. Elvira wasn't picked. I mean, I did pick her if they pick like Teu on 4-5. Or Cabal, right? Then of course it's a force ban immediately. My second flan mainly is for Harsetti matchups, but outside of Harsetti matchups, I would pick her more often into matchups versus Boss Arunca, because the tempo speed flan actually doesn't do that much versus a Boss Arunca in that setup because she's so tanky. So the high damage one made it much easier to try to break through, because this is a difference of like almost 700 attack and like over 40 crit damage, right? So it's a huge difference between the speed versus the slow one, and the epic dash pass obviously helped a lot, right? Just by pulling more flans from the dailies and stuff. So just kind of made it a no-brainer to build up my second one. Crow is good if people play like early flan into you. I didn't really love picking Crow just because I don't know, my crown win rate is very low, and I feel like people are really good at playing around it. But if you ever did need to like play mitigation that wasn't on prot set, because DJB was really prevalent in the last 2 weeks of the meta, or maybe even the last month, right, leading up to the last 2 weeks of the meta or the season. DJB was starting to force people to build mitigation that didn't have prot set, so that the DJB doesn't have the option to go S2 S3, right? When they were able to like S2 push back and then S3, they gain all the tempo, they invert your barrier, they just fuck your butt, right? Disgusting, right? By having knights that didn't have protection set, it allowed you to still guarantee mitigation without having that lose condition to DJB. And that is also a little bit why DJB started falling off towards the end of the season, because of that reason, right? People made adjustments to change their Illidan builds, change their Crow builds, change their ARAS builds to not have the prot set so that they can guarantee mitigation through without having the weak lose condition to the Desert Jewel Basar. Rana, nothing special. If I need a cleanser, Stella Harpa, dual attacks, nothing crazy. Blue Tyrant was there if I needed to protect my backline win condition. Most cases with Spirit Eye Celine. If she got stunned or something, then I can just instant cleanse and then just play it from there. But more so a Guild War unit than anything. Lifesteal, immunity, Yufine, nothing crazy. My first Harsetti, which is on an effectiveness build on Abyssal Crown, but again, I stopped playing her, so she's not very good. LCB, if they ever picked Candy, then this is not bad. Robbie, counter set, really didn't pick her much either. Arya, I did pick her, and I did have her on Fairytale, so she did look something like this. If the game's gonna allow me to save my build. Question mark? Question mark, question mark? Question mark. Okay. So I had my Arya 164 FRES on a damage build, and the reason why I had the Arya geared is so that if I ever played like ML Arya or Belian or Illidan and I had a lot of effect resistance on my team, I could pick Arya, or I can slam Arya. I get 40 for free from her passive, I get 15 from her imprint, I get like more from like Bastion of Hope if I have my Achates on field, so it was really good to try to shut down some people who didn't have much AoE. They're just playing single target. So the Arya was good in that sense. Yeah. Albedo, just mitigation. Again, immunity is mandatory so that you can protect yourself from the Flan lose condition. I had my injury Flan that I was playing, so I had injury Harsetti. So I had two Harsettis that I was playing when I was trying to play with Harsetti open, but obviously that ship has sailed, so there's that. Benya, just the standard. When I was playing, anytime I have a backline win condition and I need to just protect it, or if they have AoE versus a squishy target like Celine, then I'll pick Bride Senya so that it's almost like a guaranteed win condition. And then obviously 3F plus Bride Resolve is just so much damage with Oath of Punishment. So just basically whenever I had a backline win condition, I just slammed her pretty much. Cillian, she was picked, but this is a Guild War build, but I had her on like a lifesteal build or some sort at like 220 speed on book. So there's that. Yolha, very, very good unit versus Amid Straze Cleavers, as I mentioned many times in this video. So yeah, if they Straze S3, your Yolha just tanks it, and then he dies from the reflect damage, so it's very good. Karin, this is the build pre-buff, so I haven't changed his build yet ever since the bounce patch, so there's that. But this is the build I was running. Anytime they had like, you know, Tori as a solo DPS, I could pick Karin to just like kill her with fixed damage, right? Hwyam, she was popping off for me in the last week. If they were playing Cleave, or when Tenebria started, you know, being really rampant in the meta, she became really good as an anchor, because what people were doing was they would pick Tenebria very early on in the draft on like 1-2 in the last week of grinding or pushing for legend. And so one of the adaptations that high legend players made was they would pick the Hwyang on 2 and they would go New Moon Luna on 3. And the reason for that is because New Moon Luna on 3 wouldn't care because you have skill effect nullifier, so the Tenebria can't land on you. So it gives you tempo and it gives you pressure. And then Hwyang gives you an anchor as a DPS anti-cleave versus any form of a setup that Tenebria would throw at you. And most cases it would be behind like a boss Veronica. So yeah, there's a lot of adaptations that, you know, we were making throughout the end of the season, I guess. But Hwyang was definitely very strong against Tenebria for sure. Karin didn't pick very much. Only time I picked it was like into people who were playing like Cidd Cleave, which is very rare. Triple Torrent RB for when I was not pre-banning Renock, and or if I just need a guarantee damage, if they're like playing aggro into me, or they pick like Edward Elric, and then I can just guarantee Edward Elric kills my RB, and then I just fucking slam it back on them. Prots at Yufine, one of my I guess core mitigation knights. Um, Obviously I never self-imprinted her because the defense is kind of useless on her. So I'd always be team release imprint, but just for the sake of the video, and if Smoggy would let me, I was 2170 defense, 331,570 HP, and again, immunity is mandatory. Why? Because of Peira. GG. And then Yufine was a slow damage Yufine, so that if I ever picked Zio into Harsetti, I had the option of nuking a unit with my green Yufine into a slow Harsetti matchup. So that, because if you pick like a speed Yufine, typically you're not going to have enough damage to kill tanky units that are specifically built when Harsetti's open, right? A lot of people will play like slower, tankier units in a Harsetti matchup. So that's why I had the green Yufine ready on a high damage build to try to combat that. And shout out to Xarian and Harrison for this idea. And Wukong was also a very good pick into aim and strays players, where obviously he has crit resistance and pen resistance by 50%. And obviously if like, you know, you have Illinav as well, a lot of people were just slamming strays to try to just kill you through Illinav. So what you would do is you would basically pick Yulha and Wukong on 4-5 and then ban last. Right? That way Straze is basically a nullified pick. So either way, if they ban Yulha or if they ban Wukong, that Straze is gonna die. Or Straze is gonna be at least nullified, right? And so that's why I wanted to have the Wukong geared for that. And I had on Sweet Miracle to increase my HP to be higher than my mitigation knights, because a lot of my mitigation knights are around 30k-ish. So I wanted to make sure that he had the highest HP, which is why I had Sweet Miracle on him. And obviously I wasn't using my... I have 3 max... Okay, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I have 3 Sweet Max Miracles. One's on Laya, one's on Choux, one used to be on Conquer Lilius, but last season I didn't play Conquer Lilius at all, so that's why I had it on Wukong instead of anybody else. And Requiem Rwana, I had her just on like a generic high effectiveness build with as much attack as possible at 302. Really nothing too crazy there. I had my Seaside Bellona at Lifesteal and Immunity. Again, high attack to try to combat if I just need to like deal with like a Bellion or like FCC, or they have like Lidica or whatever, then I'll just pick Seaside Bellona to try to combat all the AoE coming in, and high attack to be a bit more synergized with the Rain Guard special drink. Illinav, this is just a prop build, really nothing special. I had immunity on this, but I made a bit of a change, and I don't know where the builds or where the pieces went, so too bad. Edward Elric just used to anti-cleave, so if they ever pick like Lidica or Ran with squishy units like Ludwig, I just picked this Edward Elric to just jam into the Ludwig and just kill him. Very, very good anti-cleave unit, and if you have Edward, you need to have this ready at all times. This is what we call like Red Rocket, is because he's red, and he'll kill you really fast like a rocket, so it's Red Rocket. Anyways, Inheritor Amiki, I think this is probably one of the best Inheritor Amiki builds, I dare say, in the world. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but 5.6k, almost 5.7 with 150 FRES and immunity, and yeah, this unit fucking carried me versus cleavers. She's just broken. She's just so strong. She's just like 1v4s like so often, and if you don't have her built, you need to have her built. So just for the record. Emoken, you have to have ER this season, because if you ever pick this into like Veronica and Elagos, you need to make sure that you're able to resist the Elagos S3. So yeah, that's why I have effect resistance and just bulk, basically. Alencia was there for Harsetti matchups. G-Perg was on an ER trap, which is ungeared now. I had Blood Moon Haze on counter POV to tank or play versus Aimid, obviously. Bossarunka on Rocket Punch builds. And Candy was also geared for Elris, but didn't really pick her much because honestly, she is kind of disappointing. But yeah, that's basically all of the units on my account that I use this season. I would say my MVP is definitely Lomo Peira and like Abyssal Yufine and Witch of the Mere Tenebria. And yeah, I guess I'll do a Q&A now if anyone has any questions about any of my builds or whatever. So feel free to ask if you have any questions.